Well, glory be and mercy me, we've done it yet again. Here on a magical, glorious, now winter's day, we walk through the graveyard on our daily routine and our daily walk. So many things that we could be talking about. The continuing invasion of the Wet'suwet'en, the overt and obvious climate change catastrophe, the new Omicron variant that has come into Canada now. All of these things continuing and ongoing, the natural consequences of abiding by the religious ideology of the capitalist death cult. And I do call it a religious ideology, neoliberalism, the idea that if we give all of the money to one person, they'll trickle it back down, is neither an economic system or even a way to organize ourselves. As the millennials are growing up, having been duped by the absurdist slogans that were placed at our feet when we were growing up, we are beginning to see how fraudulent they truly are. Things like the invisible hand of the free market will decide can easily be translated to mean chaos brings order. These incoherent statements that disprove themselves, have no evidence, and don't work, simply put. And there's been something that I've been thinking about an awful lot this weekend. It's something I continuously have found myself talking about to myself. I found myself thinking about it, and I feel like my consciousness needs to articulate it openly in one of these videos, and so I'll do it just here. If we see that what we are operating under is a failed ideology, a religious ideology of a cult, of a death cult, no less, well, this somewhat begs the question. If we are going to reject this religious ideology, the worship of money, what shall we put in its place? What can we believe, let's say, or understand as universal truths, something to focus on as a goal? And this will take us into what many people consider to be hubu-jubu territory, but the reality is that I don't consider it to be particularly hubu-jubu. I consider it to be firmly planted on what we understand. This is why I call myself a secular theist, just to annoy the atheist types. With love. Because traditionally such a term has been contradictory. It doesn't work. But I call myself a secular theist. Oh, we've got a little doggy here. We've got a little doggy. Hi there, little doggy. Hi there. Hi there. An excellent way to start this conversation. So let's begin with what the heck is this place? What are we doing here? Certainly the worship of money has been a complete and total failure. Money being something that we invented ourselves. It's based on nothing. It's an imaginary tool that we use to help with organization, but instead of doing that, we've started worshiping it. And so, what should we actually be focusing on? What is real in the world? What is tangible? Well, let's begin with what is firmly understood within the secular sciences. Quantum mechanics and quantum energy. That the quantum scientists believe that they have proven scientifically that underpinning all of creation is a singular energy, something that we all exist upon and we stand upon. What is exciting about this discovery and this realization from a secular position is, or rather from a theological position, is that if you read the words of Aquinas, Augustus, Sir Isaac Newton, who was a wonderful theist, and you actually see what they had to say about the subject of God, you see that what they say is oh, it's a singular energy that underpins all of creation. But that's what God is. This misunderstanding of this that came out of most recently the New Atheists allowed them to create absurdist icons like the spaghetti monster and talk about teapots floating around in space and things like this, which are all beings that exist within the confines of the universe, while the theists are talking about the universe itself. And not even the universe, but all universes that are possible and all things outside and within and all of that. The collective force, the singular energy, what's become understood, the quantum energy. And so there it is. We've shown it exists mathematically, and on top of that, it's what the theists have been talking about this whole time. Theists such as Sir Isaac Newton, incidentally, people that no secular scientist would say, oh, this man's a crackpot. Well, he wrote a 2-page tract, right? You can go read it, where he talks about the nature of God, and within it he says, almost as an afterthought, because it's been so well understood in theological circles, he says God is the collection of all things. Well, here it is, the singular energy upon which we rest. So this begs a question, and I think it's a useful question, right? Then when we get into this conversation, we typically talk about does God exist? This question is annoying, and I really, really dislike it, because it allows people who've never read the literature and don't know anything about the subject to say spaghetti monsters are what we're talking about, and that's God, to misdefine it on purpose, whether through malice or through illiteracy. And they don't seem to know what to do when confronted with what's actually being said. And so rather than asking this annoying question that allows for a semantic misunderstanding, where we say, does God exist? We simply say, okay, this is what we've been talking about. Here's the quantum energy, the singular energy. We've shown it mathematically. Is it sentient? Now there's a very interesting question if you ask me. We know the quantum energy is there. We know it underpins all things. We know it's a singular energy. We know that we dissolve into it. This incidentally makes us light beings, more or less. This makes us divine beings, if you like to use the theological language. And there it is. Is it sentient? So this raises the obvious question that will always come out of the secularists, which is good to ask. Where's your evidence? You make this claim, so sure, here's the quantum energy. No one's going to deny that there's the quantum energy. Is it sentient? Oh. Is it sentient? Well, what's the evidence? Well, if we understand what the quantum energy is, right, that it is the collection of all things, it is a force that underpins us, that it is us and we are it, that we are bound together, we cannot be separated, right? Then, almost as a truism, it has to be said that it has to be at least as sentient as you are. It must be at least as sentient as I am. That if I am sentient, and if I consider myself sentient, and I do, then the energy that creates me, that sustains me, that is me, that I am it and it is me, must also be sentient to that degree, at least. At least. And of course, it doesn't take a leap of logic, and in fact it's quite reasonable and rational to say, oh, well, that this quantum energy is as sentient as we all are, collectively, together. And that it is as sentient as all things are, because it is experiencing all things simultaneously and at once through each of us as individuals. That we are bound to it and it is bound to us, and so it must be at least as sentient as we are. And this leads me into a fun little thing that I get to do, where if somebody asks me or refuses to acknowledge that this is evidence, I get to say to them, oh, would you acknowledge the evidence if it waved directly in front of your face? So the evidence is us. This is why Descartes says that nature itself reveals the nature of God. That's a misquote, but you understand, or a paraphrase rather. And so I can hear many people, and I know that many people will think to themselves, okay, John, great. Let's concede the point just for fun. There's the quantum energy. It's as sentient as we are. It must be. It logically has to be as a truism. It is us and we are it. It has to be as sentient as we are. Why does this matter? Why does this matter at all? I have 3 interesting things to say to this. Number 1, because it's true. I find that simply believing or understanding or espousing things, contemplating things because they're true, is widely and largely the best case, the smartest thing to do. If something is true and it can be shown to be true, you should simply take that position because it is true. Point number 2. Sorry, there's just someone up ahead here. I don't want to get hit by cars. So point number 1, because it's true. Point number 2, because it allows us to understand that we all live in a state of equality with one another. That we are equal to one another. And I can hear, especially right-wing voices say, well, John, that's not true at all. I'm quite tall, I can reach a tall shelf. This person's quite short, they can't reach the shelf. There's differences. We're not equal, there are differences. Right? That's sort of a childish version. But you see how very quickly this can disseminate into, well, these races are this, and this group is that, and this and that and the other thing. And to which I say, that's a misunderstanding of what we're saying when we're saying equality. We are not talking about the equality of capability. We are talking about the equality of validity. That if we truly were all walking around understanding that we are all equals to one another in our validity, then the world would be a better place, and it would be a better place by default. Because a group of people who understand that the person they're speaking with, regardless of their stature, status, or position in the world, the understanding that this person is equally valid, they're having an equally valid experience to the experience that we are having, well, we would treat those people with more kindness and respect and dignity. Be gone with this idea of backseat quarterbacking another person's life. A lot of well, you should have done happens in our society. A lot of, well, you should have's and a lot of those sorts of backseat quarterback statements, because a person who is having a lived experience doesn't want to acknowledge that another person's lived experience, even if it is completely foreign, even if it is strange or odd or unusual to them, well, it is equal in its validity. In the highest form of hope, we can say that a people who are walking around saying that the lived experience of others are just as valid as the lived experience of myself, that such a group of people would be incapable of racism, would be incapable of bigotries, because they would all understand that the lived experiences of one another are equal in their validity to one another. We're all born. No one asked to be born. The force, the quantum force, births us into reality. We have an experience. Each of those experiences, all part of the experience of the quantum energy as it seeks to discover itself and its own nature. And then we all die equally. No one can escape it. That it is an inevitability, it is our fate, and we are all equal in that. It is the great leveler. And so, we should believe it because it's true, and we should believe it because it gives each and every one of us an equality of validity in the way that we see the world. And finally, the third one. You have millions of little microbes all over your skin. Did you know that? If you don't know that, well, now you do. There are millions of tiny little microbes that exist on your skin, harmlessly going about their lives while you go about yours. You don't think about them until some person comes along and unfortunately reminds you that all of these creepy crawlies exist. I hope you're not shivering over there. But what would you do if suddenly all of these microbes began to dig into your skin? What would you do if all of these little microbes began to put up industry and start to burn off sections of your body? Let's say you lose your pinky finger to these microbes as they begin to destroy parts of you. How long would you tolerate that? How long would you permit these little microbes to continue around and destroying parts of you? Well, what makes you think that the quantum force that we exist on is going to tolerate the very same activity that we are doing? That we are plundering the earth, that we are mining it for its resources, we are sucking up liquids from it, we are digging holes, and even deeper than any of that, we're building structures like the Long Hadron Collider, which is literally designed to blow pieces of the quantum energy apart in order to discover what it is. How long do you think an energy that is alive and sentient and capable of its own opinions and positions and thoughts, how long do you think such a creature would permit our action in this way before it begins to fight back against us in a war we are predestined to lose? And so when people ask me, well, John, what's the point of this conversation? Why even care if the quantum energy is alive? Well, not only because it's true, and not only because it's a nice idea about equality, but also because we should care about our own survival as a species. We should humble ourselves before the quantum energy. We should humble ourselves before the rule set that it has obviously erected around us. We should act in a manner as if we are living within a living structure that has its own thoughts and ideas, that it communicates to us through the rules we must abide by, lest we stumble into a pit of snakes that will gobble us up. That the universe will absolutely cast us aside. That it will absolutely have the earth destroy itself to blow away our infrastructure. It will absolutely heat up the temperature in order to roast us in our air-conditioned homes. That we walk around as if we are the apex of creation. We walk around pretending as though we are the force that is in control when it is patently and obviously false. That there are forces well beyond our comprehension, and it will not tolerate us for very much longer. And what's beautiful about this conversation that we're having here is that if we do humble ourselves before the force, the quantum force, before the forces of God, well, if we do that, if we humble ourselves, then it appears that this energy will empower us in ways we have only yet begun to contemplate. That oil has shown us, given us a little spark of imagination, and shown us where humanity can go. That we can become a spacefaring people. That we can become a force in the universe itself. But that's not going to happen unless we do so in cooperation with the force that exists within us, and that we are of, and that it is of us. This is extremely important, and I'm glad that I finally talked about it. I'm glad that I finally put it out into the world, because this is the basis. This is the basis for our understanding of reality. That it is from here that we should be communicating with one another. We should abandon the death cult ideology. We should abandon the worship of money. And we should begin to pay attention to creation itself. Well, I think this is going to be the end of this video, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you didn't roll your eyes too hard. Please like, please share, please subscribe. I have a Patreon down below. Please consider donating. Even $1 helps. We need to be supporting leftist voices as far-right fascists and neoliberals work to destroy this place so they can get extra numbers on a digital screen. These guys are spending hundreds of billions of dollars to make sure that you never realize what is fundamentally the truth. You are a quantum being standing around in quantum energy. Don't let them obfuscate it. Rebel, revolt, repent. Good luck. We're gonna need it.